So where do you want to post? I want to post to page. PCal.
Are you live?
So I think we're live. Yeah, so it says preparing. Is it live? Does anyone have it up to see if it's live?
I have your page up. In the background, it's playing one of your old videos and Legacy Tip Tuesdays.
Okay, I think we should, because it says preparing, but I think we should just get started. I think we should just get started. It says live preparing. Let me just make sure there's nothing else. Go live, here we go. I'm gonna press the button now. That's what was missing. Go live anyway. We're live. We are live now. Welcome, welcome everyone to PCal Financial Group. I'm so excited to have this conversation today. We're talking about accessing untapped funds, but specifically, we are talking about private schools and prep schools. Now, many of you may know me, Billie Jane, on PCal Financial Group. I post videos regularly to help equip families because I'm really passionate about helping families to invest in their kids and to prepare for their future, what I like to call their knowledge legacy with our ESPs, using the gift of education. I'm also really passionate about helping families to protect their legacies with insurance, and also to help business owners not only mitigate risk, but also enhance their business legacies with some creative insurance solutions. But today we're focusing on knowledge legacy. And normally I've been talking more about the future, about post-secondary education, but we're scaling it back and we're talking more about the present opportunities for our kids and how they can access private and prep school opportunities. So I am so grateful to have amazing panelists with me today that I'd love to introduce to you. I'm going to first start with Ms. Cheryl Lewis. She is the Executive Director of the African Canadian Christian Network, otherwise known as ACCN. She is our private school, independent school specialist to give us some insights about some of the work that not only they do, but the opportunities available to our kids to access amazing opportunities at independent schools here. I also have Ms. Sharon Butler. For some of you who may be returning from past conversations, you will remember Ms. Sharon Butler, AKA Coach Mom. She was here last time when we were talking about athletic scholarships, and she gave some really good insights about student athletes pursuing their dream for continuing their athletic pursuits into the post-secondary education, NCAA Canadian universities. But she mentioned something during the discussion about opportunities for kids to get into prep schools, our student athletes to get into prep schools. So she's going to add that element to the conversation. And then last but not least, at all, not at least at all, Mr. Tony. Oh my goodness, Tony, you got to help me. Tony Agbaje Ojo, did I say that right?
Perfect, yeah.
So Tony is a grade 12 student, and he is currently a student at Upper Canada College, UCC, which is one of Ontario's oldest independent schools. And well-renowned. And Tony is a phenomenal individual. The amount of success that this young man has already achieved at his, tender age of what, 17 right now?
Yeah.
is incredible. I know he's been valedictorian at his school. He's been involved with, so many extracurricular activities, leading the youth. He is now boarding at the school and leading his group. I'm actually going to turn it over to everyone to share a little bit about themselves themselves, but you're going to hear even more about how incredible Tony is and what this opportunity has done for him. And he's only at the beginning of his journey. So when I turn it over to you first, Cheryl, if there's anything more that you want to add to some of the information I've shared with the families.
As Billy said, my name is Cheryl Lewis from the African Canadian Christian Network. I am the executive director, and we have been working with Black youth and their families for the last 11 years. We look to improve the life outcomes of our Black youth and families, and we do so to create safe and equitable spaces for our young people, so they can have opportunities that are out there, so they can also to excel academically. They will become leaders in their communities and lead lives that are free of violence, and also to that they'll be contributing citizens of this GTA.
Yes, amazing, amazing. Thank you. By the way, for anyone who's just tuning in, I'd love to say hi. Please say hi. Let me know that you're here. Have your pens and papers. Please engage, ask your questions. We'd love to hear from you. What we're doing is talking about private and prep school opportunities for our kids. And I've got amazing panelists here to join us. You just heard from Ms. Cheryl Lewis. Now, Sharon Butler, Coach Mom, is there anything more that you want to share about yourself for our audience?
I would just share that I really work as an advocate as well for student athletes and their families, understanding how to navigate this whole basketball scene. Basketball obviously extremely popular and getting even more popular in Canada and in the world. And obviously with the success of a lot of our Canadian athletes in youth sport universities here overseas in Europe, as well as obviously NCAA, NBA, WNBA. Many families, kids are trying to follow the pathways of those student athletes. And many of the pathways, or one of the main pathways, is through prep schools to get to that next level post-secondary and to potentially play professionally. And so really teaching families how to navigate that academically and athletically, because your academics is equally as important, even more so than the athletic skill set. And that's what also can afford you access. Yes, that can afford you access into, private schools, which we're talking about today.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. We had a few people come on. Natasha Blair. Hey, Natasha Ricketts. Thank you for joining us. I know you guys are going to get some awesome pearls. Salah. Hello, thank you so much for joining us. So we are just introducing everyone. We are talking about private schools and prep schools, and we've just started our conversation, just getting to know each other. We've met Cheryl Lewis, who's with the ACCN, who helps families, their children to get into private schools. We've got Coach Mom, Sharon Butler, who just told us more about herself and her helping with student athletes. And one of the paths that she helps them with is prep schools. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tony Agbaje Ojo, who's going to tell us a little bit more. I mean, he's an incredible young man, but it's okay. Go ahead. You can toot your horn for us.
Thank you. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. My name is Tony. I'm in grade 12 here at Upper Canada, and I've been here since grade 6. So I think that's about 6 years now. I started with ACCN, so I've known Miss Lewis for a very long time, and I've worked together with her. And I guess what I can talk about my experience here is that you get as much as you put in. That's, if I had to a quote or I had to sum it up, that's how I'd say it, is that you get as much as you put in. That if you put in the time and you put in the work, not only will you be recognized and you'll achieve all of your goals, but you'll feel a sense of fulfillment at these schools, especially that I don't think you can really feel to the full extent at public schools. There's so much to do with private schools, and I can talk about anything, any questions, or I can talk about my experience a bit later. But I think that just the sense of fulfillment that you get here because of the work that you put in is that you're rewarded for that, especially at private and prep schools.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tony. Wasn't that awesome? Look at him. Doesn't he look so dapper there? Awesome. Awesome. It is such an honor to have all three of you join us. So thank you. And a quick shout out to Stacy. Hi, Stacy. Thank you for joining us. And it looks like your mom's with us, Tony. Hi, Shola. So best behavior. But anyway, Tony's incredible. So, what I love to do is, I love to help families to prepare for the future, right? But I also recognize that sometimes there can be gaps. And so that's why I started this series to talk about how our kids can fund their own legacies. And what I'd love to touch on is how can the private school or prep schools help equip kids, to pursue those post-secondary ambitions and also have success, whether it's acquiring scholarships, things like that. I'd love to hear from you, Cheryl, if you can weigh in a little bit more, since you do so much work in helping kids to get placed into the Canadian independent schools.
I think it'll probably just paves the way for them. Having done it for 11 years, we've seen the metrics coming out from what we've done. The kids have gone on to also to access scholarship money in US and in Canada. And some of our students who graduated are now also to making six-figure incomes. So, and also to just giving back to the community, because they just need to be put on the right trajectory. And once they're there, they just flourish, because our kids are brilliant. Sometimes we just don't have the opportunity to do that. So we provide the equitable spaces for them. So we say to them, you belong.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. And Tony is headed in that direction, as you can see, right? He has just gotten started, but we can see big things in his future. And what I love about what you said is also coming to sort of lend back, right? And I love that. Just we can see that in terms of the work that Tony's even been doing at this young age already. He's already pouring back and seeing how he can also serve. So I love that comment as well. So for parents that are thinking about pursuing, independent schooling, private schools, what is that? So let's start again. I'll start again with you, Cheryl, and then I want Sharon, if you can jump in. But what is that process like? What should parents be aware of, in having their kids pursue this path?
I always advise parents, especially they meet me and my kid is in grade 2, grade 3. We do have access to schools that will offer financial aid and scholarships for kids as young as grade 2 plus. But
Really?
it's important for you to track your child's education. We work with high achieving, high performing students. So we encourage parents, take a look at how your child is progressing in school. I've had a student brilliant in every other subject, but math is important. And also to most of these schools will probably offer an IB education, international baccalaureate, or advanced placement. So that gives them the edge when they go to universities. So we are looking for kids who are going to be performing at that pace, a higher pace than they will at most classes that do not offer those programs. So also to pay attention, if your kid is failing in one subject, we encourage you, get some help, get a tutor, get them involved in some extracurricular. It's also too about being a rounded student. So don't forget the extracurricular activities. Also too, they need to be able to balance between the academic and the extracurricular. Also too, one of the things that's important as well is a sense of community. What does community mean to you? And that's huge in many of these schools, to look for your community and the community involvement. What does it mean to you? So we say to them, volunteer, get involved. Just look at for opportunities anywhere you can to encourage leadership in some of these young people.
I love that. And, for families who are also thinking down the road about post-secondary opportunities, all of the comments that you shared, Cheryl, are actually creating that foundation to actually make them successful. Because when you look at scholarship, let's say academic scholarship applications, they're looking for all of those things. They're looking for the well-roundedness. They're looking for community involvement. They're looking for those leadership skills. So what you're doing to equip your kids to get into a private or prep school is actually positioning them to continue that journey to success. So I really, really appreciate that comment. Sharon, when you look at the student athletes, right, and them trying to get into or pursuing prep schools, what does that process look like? I know that you've done a lot of work, especially for students getting into schools in the US.
So it really is very similar to what Cheryl had commented on in many respects. When I work with student athletes and their families, I assess them academically and athletically. So I get their report cards to be able to monitor those pieces that Cheryl referred to in terms of, being strong academics, academically and well-rounded, and be able to strategize in terms of how to improve this. Again, if, a lot of people can spend money on sports, and other extracurricular activities. So I also encourage as well, maybe shovel some of that fund into the academic component. So get that tutor as well. So those are the things that we strategize about. Very specific to the US requirements in terms of post-secondary is a little different in terms of in Canada. And I say a little different in the sense that they start looking at your grades very early from grade 9. Here, most colleges, university, we look at your grades from grade 11. So you don't really have a lot of opportunities to not do so well academically. But if you don't, there's strategies that I work through with the family as well. So that's the academic component in terms of looking at, keeping the student athlete taking the right type of courses as well. Because again, for the US, there's core courses that they need to take, for example, which again is a little different than in Canada. So again, continue to monitor the academic side. Athletically, working with them in terms of the same thing, devising strategies in terms of their development, linking them with trainers, much like I would link with tutors, link with trainers to develop their skill set. And then when they're ready, we start the application process, much like, again, if it's just, I'm going to say a student athlete that's not necessarily taking part in sports necessarily. And yes, that well-roundedness is really important. And I think sometimes that's what people forget. Private schools often are looking to see how you will fit into their community, into the community. So that's a language that's often used, is the community. So we want you focused. So when I'm helping with the application, because I'll help with the application, I'll read the application and I will say things like, no, I don't want to see that, I'm trying to go to the MBA. How about you're trying to get your diploma to then get your degree to then try to get to the MBA? So really writing through some of those pieces, but more importantly, I try to find the right fit for a student athlete academically and athletically, because again, those two can vary according to what skill set you have and academics. And the last piece I would say is, with the grades, really important. I've seen really amazing school turn down really amazing student athletes because they're not paying attention to their academics. So that's why, of course, that is something that I always push, is getting your academics right.
Right. That's great points. And I'm hoping everyone is really hearing that loud and clear, but that's why we say student athlete, student first. So, keeping the academics in mind and focus on that. And I like what you said, parents invest a lot of money into sports. I'm a hockey mom, so I know too the time and financial investment into that. But I appreciate that comment, that word of advice. Shuffle some of those resources towards their academic success if you find that they're struggling a bit there. So thank you for that. I really do appreciate that. So Mr. Tony, I'd like to hear if you can share with everyone a bit about your own journey, because you've been in the independent school for some time. But yeah, if you can share with everyone a little bit more about your own story and what is your experience at Upper Canada? What opportunities has it afforded you?
Thank you. So, anytime a journey starts, always the beginning, and I can attribute all of my success to my mom. And she's a teacher, so she helped me. She definitely helped me from the get. And just making sure I didn't slack off with my academics. I remember each summer I'd have to complete tens of notebooks on language and math. And at the time I hated it, but looking back, if she didn't do that and she didn't push me, I wouldn't have been where I am today. I remember there were days where I didn't get to watch my TV show because I didn't finish my homework and all that stuff. So you can laugh about it now, but honestly, if she didn't push me, then I know what I gained from those experiences, and I'm very eternally thankful to her.
Yeah. Shout out, Mom!
Shout out, Mom. Yeah. And I grew up in church. I can't go to church as much as I like anymore because I'm not living at home anymore. But I've grown up in the church, and I've had a strong spiritual foundation as well, so I contribute a lot of my success to that as well. And in terms of my journey, I've been here since grade 6. I started with ACCN, and I don't know, I guess it's weird to talk about it, but I think that what I brought to the school was just my energy. I'm always eager to do new things. I'm always eager to innovate, always eager to create things that weren't there before. And I think that my working with people, they saw that off me. I feel like people feed off my energy. Because when I'm working on projects or I'm helping others on a project, I get really amped up and I get really excited. and I'm always ready to go. And I burn myself out sometimes. I got sick last week because I started school too fast. I had to pace myself a little bit, but I think that in terms of like what you said, like how do you fit into their system, is that I'm always eager to complete any opportunity in any diverse area. So what has it afforded me in terms of networking? I saw as one of the key points.
Yes.
I run a mental health conference at the school. We did it online in June or in
Wow.
May. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We did it online in May because of COVID. We hope to do it in person. But we're hoping to do it in person maybe in November for international students here and in the area, because we know that they can be isolated, and at that time there's a lot of different factors going on. So I've networked with Dr. Zahn. She's the general director at CAMH. And she's on the board of governors here at the school. So I've worked with her and I've had interviews with her. Yeah, so that's one of the key networks that I've made.
Nice
Yeah.
network to access. Yeah.
Yeah, really good. And I'm hoping to become a pediatrician, but also have a really strong interest in mental health. So I'm networking with her a lot. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is so great to hear. And you've mentioned that, you're there. So you're a boarder. You're actually living on campus. So I'd love to come back and touch a bit about that experience of living at school. It's great that you can lend a little bit about that. So, yes, we'll come back to that. I wanted to ask a question, Cheryl. You were saying, that a lot of the students they who are going through the private or prep school track do well post-secondary, right? Do you have any sort of like metrics or anything about how, private school educated students do in terms of continuing to pursue post-secondary?
All of the schools and all of the students that we've worked with, they boast about 100% placement at post-secondary.
Listen to that. 100%.
So the kids are enthused and energized to pursue for, post-secondary education.
Yeah.
And there's, some of the, probably 1 or 2 students have taken that gap here, but they've gone back. So they're very important to do your post-secondary. And it's as Tony said, it's like the ability to just sort of like expand. I mean, I'm not quite sure. I mean, the fact that he's working with mental health, and, which is such a topic which we cannot overlook, because I kept saying during COVID, I'm sure the kids are not okay. And I thought it was a brilliant initiative for you to work with some of the kids, because it takes away part of the stigma of mental health. So therefore we have future leaders who can think of innovative things to do like that, working with CAMH. But what is also important at this point in time is the networking that he's creating right now. When you go to these schools, the networking, you got to learn network. That is how you're going to get through and go further. You're going to know someone who's probably dad or mom is a CEO of some company. You network also too. That helps when you're looking for some employment as well. So, and having that kind of initiative on your resume when you're looking for a summer job will take you places.
Huge.
Huge.
I mean, what do they say? Your net worth, is it your network determines your net worth, or your net worth is determined by your network? But yeah. So, I mean, Tony, you got CAMH in your network. That's incredible. So that's awesome. And I appreciate that. And I think it's insightful for people to know that, if they're able to help their students to step up their academic game and have the opportunity to access, private or prep school opportunities, it really does position them well at 100% rate to continue that on. But as you mentioned, it opens up and develops more skills, and also opens doors just simply because of the students that they are around and the opportunities that they're having at school. So that's awesome. For anyone that's just joining us and you're wondering like, what's going on? We are actually talking about private and prep schools. And as part of the Accessing Untapped Funds, normally I like to talk about preparing for post-secondary, but we took it back to now and what can we do for our kids today? And we've got 3 amazing panelists, Cheryl Lewis of ACCN, we've got Coach Mom, Sharon Butler, and we also have Mr. Tony Agbaje Ojo, all lending their words of wisdom and encouragement and advice about how we can equip our kids to be able to pursue this track of, independent schooling so that they can also go on and pursue post-secondary education. So if you've got questions, please don't hesitate, engage, let us know. We are taking those questions. Our panelists are happy to answer your questions. So Tony, let's, I would love to, share with some of our audience a little bit more about, as I said, your boarding. And I also know that there's some other opportunities in terms of travel. I think this is kind of some good, information for families to know about the kind of opportunities are available to their kids. So tell us a little bit about your experience right now boarding and some of your traveling experience.
For sure. So I started in grade 6, like I said, and this is my first year in boarding. I used to come to and from home to school every day. But last year in grade 12 is a very hectic year at the school, especially because we have university applications, we have essays to do. I'm in an IB program at the school, and maybe we can explain that a little bit later too. But a lot of the big projects happen this year. And because of my extracurriculars, and I had a lot of connections with teachers who were in boarding and a lot of boys, the school reached out to me and they actually offered me a spot in boarding. And I was able to get funding for that. So I'm living at school right now in my dorm, yeah. And I can honestly say that I've never slept better. I have so much more sleep to get, and that's really helped me in all areas. And I'm really grateful to the school that I was able to get a spot. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Just since you touched on that and the fact that, the spot opened up to you for boarding, we're going to come back and talk about the travel after, but I want to turn it over to let's start with Sharon in terms of, financial aid. The fact that the school opened up an opportunity for Tony to board, so there was probably some support involved with that. Sharon, can you speak to, any kind of about the financial aid scholarship opportunities for kids who are going into prep schools?
Yeah, and the language I like to teach families is financial aid. Scholarship we use at the post-secondary level because, again, they are encouraging student athletes, not athlete students. And so, I encourage parents and families to think of this as an investment. There are often students that I place in the US, and there isn't a lot of opportunity for, say, a $0 opportunity. Does that exist? I'm sure it does. And that's dependent also on your athletic ability and, of course, your academics as well. So I try to teach families that, yes, there's cost associated with prep school, and that's going to range according to the type of prep schools that it is. So, for example, the private boarding type that Tony is speaking to in the US can range anywhere from 45,000 US upwards of 62, 70,000 US. But
you mean for 1 year?
Exactly.
1 year?
1 year. For 1 year. And obviously the most families that I know can't really afford that. My son went to a prep school at age 16, and his school cost at that school was 57,000 US dollars. I chuckled initially. US, I have to add that part in, the US. No, I didn't pay $57,000. I love him, but I'm sorry, could not afford that at all. Yes, did I pay? Absolutely. I paid roughly about $10,000 each year. Okay. And I looked at that as an investment because at the end of the day, when he was finished with that and ended up getting a scholarship, that paid for it. Do you know what I mean? And so, and realistically, when you think about even from a sporting perspective, by the time you pay for your club, for the training, for shoes, for this or that, it adds up. And so that's anyways part of my teaching to family, that it really is an investment. So in respect to prep school, yes, most people that go to the States do get financial aid, and it will range. It will range also on your family's need. They always hear that through school, that your financial aid is based on need. So if you're a millionaire, it's going to be hard for you to potentially get help. Right? Because you're showing the need. You're not showing need, sorry. But obviously, single parent families, for example, I don't know, averaging, income, I don't know, 60,000 less, so on and so forth. That is something that you're showing a need. If you have siblings, or if that parent and family have siblings, for example, that you're having to obviously take care of, that's also showing a need. And, one of the strategies from the US as well that I teach families is when you're obviously applying to US school, you logically will calculate everything, right, in US dollars as well. So that's the other piece that I also teach family. But there are opportunities, there's no doubt. I mean, listen, if you can pay, anybody can go to prep school. That's a reality, right? But at the same time, as much as I say that, prep schools, like Cheryl has said, are looking for that student athlete that can contribute to the community, and is obviously interested in that, you know, in this amazing opportunity. I mean, my son also attended Upper Canada College.
Yeah, I was going to
From
say we
grade,
should plug that.
yeah, yeah, and it was absolutely amazing. The network, I mean, he's still very close friends with a lot of the students that
Wow.
attended, even to the, you know, and some of them are filmer, they film, you know, like the businesses that they're actually involved in. It's fascinating. He's starting his own podcast and networking across the world, because a lot of his friends are across the world. It's
Wow.
just, it is absolutely, absolutely amazing. And I know, and I'll end here, that of course most people look at the money, like, I can't afford that. But again, it's an investment. Often I like to say, you know, you're going to have to take a hit somewhere. It can't be that I'm going to have the latest LeBron shoes, the latest this, that, and that. It's an investment that will be helpful in the long run, because again, the networking, and of course, boasting that 100%, you know, going to university, that's consistent across North America in terms of private schools. Yes, there are private schools here in Canada as well. Yes, they provide financial aid as prep school as well. So, you know, what exists in the States certainly also exists here in Canada. But obviously not all private schools play at that high level in terms of prep school, but
Okay.
there are a number of private schools within the Ontario region that also have prep programs.
Okay.
That you would have to apply to, etc.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate that, you know, American perspective, or, you know, the perspective of going to school outside of Ontario or even Canada.
Yeah.
I think that's useful for parents to also gain some insights. Cheryl, is there anything more that you can add towards that in terms of financial aid, what families need to, you know, be aware of in terms of applying for financial aid?
Yes, most of our students go through many of these independent schools through financial aid and also to scholarships at the school. Financial aid in some schools like Upper Canada College, they have a very large financial aid budget, and some schools have smaller financial aid budgets. But the ability to pay is determined more or less by a third-party company called Apple Financial. So they will take you through, and it's nothing scientific. You can't say, okay, you make this much, and you know you're going to qualify for this much. They take everything into consideration, and they may determine, okay, you can probably pay zero, or you can't afford to pay anything, or you can afford to pay that much, and the school may decide, okay. And also, to the fact when you go to a private school, it's a two-way street. It's that the kid is a good fit for that school, and also to the school, you know, so vice versa. So therefore, you worth something to them, and then they're worth something to you. So therefore, that has to be a choice between the student and also to the schools. So they can come back and say, okay, we can offer you an opportunity at our school, but we will probably give it to you at, you know, probably some schools. They pay for uniforms and books and transportation and meals, the whole works, depending on the student and how badly they want the student at their school. Or they could come back and say, you know, mom, dad, you can afford to pay X amount. In our Black community mostly, most parents are not thinking of investing that much money into a kid's secondary education, investing more than they would in the post-secondary education. So therefore also to their other siblings. So I have 3 kids. I can't make a choice and say I'm going to send one over the other. So therefore it's difficult for them to pay that much money. So therefore we ask them, we look for financial aid is important. It is no shame in asking. I know there's some stigma. Some people say there's stigma attached to having financial aid, but most of these schools don't identify the students who are getting financial aid. And the fact is, you know, therefore, there is no shame. As I said, that money is used just for that, and it can be transferred to anything else. So therefore, you might as well have access to that money if you can. So yes, again, while some schools, as I said, may give uniforms and books and everything else, and some of them boarding as well. Depending on where you live, you can be considered for the boarding program as well. But also to some parents, you may want to think about, can I afford the extracurricular? Can I afford for uniforms? And that's something you have to take into consideration as to how you can do it. Again, it has to be very, as a parent, as Sharon said, it's an investment. How do I invest in my child's future? Is it worth it? And therefore, you would probably look at ways as to how you can fund whatever is left, whether it be 5,000, 2,000, or whatever that may be. So therefore, that's something you need to take into consideration when you're looking for an opportunity at some of these schools. Again, there are scholarships within the school. And it could be somebody from the alumni say, okay, I'm going to fund this in education for one student. And that can take them from the time they enter till the time they leave that school. So therefore, when you look at it, when you're looking at $40,000 a year, multiply that, let's say, over 6 years, over how long, depending on the grade that you enter, that's a lot of money that you've been able to amass to get a quality education.
Wow, that's, and that's important to think about as well. To also think about, what you as a parent are should consider, participating in the cost, but as you said, not just look at it as a cost, but as an investment, right? Like, and as Sharon had mentioned, Coach Mom, I mean, she had made an investment of $10,000 a year towards her son's prep school education. So I appreciate that insight, but also knowing that there are opportunities to access funds for your child to be able to go as low cost as possible and have access to an incredible opportunity, right? So I really, really appreciate that insight. And I know a lot of parents, want to have some idea about how they can make that happen. So thank you for that very important answer to that question. Tony, let's talk a little bit about some of your travel. Since we were talking about some of these extracurriculars that may cost, right? Let's talk about the travels, because I know that you've done some really cool traveling with UCC.
So with in regards to travel, I think that you really need to get involved in extracurriculars, and that's where the travel comes from. My family doesn't have the money to fly to Paris or London for Christmas break like some other families here do. But I've been involved in the bands, and with the bands, we've gone domestically to nearby festivals, but we've also gone across the border. We've gone to New York and Washington in the past 2 years. This year, I think we were going to go somewhere down south again. I'm not sure, but it got canceled, obviously. I've done a volunteer trip in Costa Rica. I went to Central America in grade 9 or 10. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then in the summer before grade 10, because of, again, band, one of the teachers at the lower school, because at my school, it splits the upper and middle. So he had a connection with a program in the States, and we actually got to fly to Europe. We went to 6 different countries for about a month. Yeah.
Wow.
That's been the biggest traveling I've done. I think we went to France and Germany and Sweden, and it was a circle trip there. It was a really, really fun time. But I've traveled all over the world, and a lot more than I would have been able to at a public school, obviously. But that all came as a result of different extracurricular programs.
Okay, so I like that emphasis on extracurricular. Not only does it position you well for success post-secondary, not only does it make you attractive to, applying to prep schools, but maintaining that, all of that extracurricular activity through their studies actually opens up more doors while studying. Like your participation in band gave you actually some world experience. So that's really amazing. I really appreciate hearing about that. I think we learned a lot about the difference, some of the considerations of Canadian versus US, and I really, really appreciate that. In terms of, let's talk about the requirements, a bit more about the requirements to get into the schools. So when we talk about, I'll start with you, Cheryl, so you can give us more like a domestic perspective. What kind of marks should parents be, striving for? I mean, of course, you want to try to get as high as possible, but like, what's sort of like the minimum, right, that parents should expect to be acceptable to a private school?
I look at students with the B+ average. So nothing less than a B+. So therefore, it's important that the kids will pay particular attention to their marks at the end of an exam. Most of the schools are going to be looking at that. There's certain subjects they would look at, again, math, English. In some schools, like we have a French school, I mean, while it's not the requirement, they would look at how you're doing in some of these schools. So I look at the last 3 years. Most schools will probably look at the last 2 years because you can detect a pattern as to how the child is performing during these schools. Also, too, when we look at a student, we get a confidential report from the teachers as to how well, the child is performing. Over the years, you can read through the lines of the pull-down menus and most of these report cards as to how well the child is really doing at the school. You look at the remarks and compare that to the teacher's comments to know whether or not you've got a kid who really needs an opportunity at this point in time. So B plus, we also choose, as I said, community. We look at your extracurricular. We look what are you involved in? How are you managing both your academic plus? So that is also important. Just not about just looking at the academics. As Sharon said, again, it's having all the add-on pieces to it. The well-rounded young man, the well-rounded young woman.
Okay, no, appreciate that. Anything more, Sharon, that you want to add to that?
Not much more. The requirement, again, in terms of, I think it's standard across North America in terms of the academics. And again, we're talking private schools specifically here, but there are prep
Right.
schools that are in Christian academies. It's, in the States, and that's a form of private school, but it's very different than the boarding school. And here in Canada, of course, we also have, the local schools that also have a prep program, for example. So, I mean, your local school is going to accept you because, technically you're in that neighborhood. So there isn't going to be any scrutiny. But when it comes to the private realm, absolutely that B plus average. But of course, you try and have your student athletes to get higher grades. But again, I always communicate with families that, as Cheryl said, it's a pattern. It starts from when they're young. And so setting that standard of development and studying when they're young. So, some things that elementary kids and families might not know is by grade 7, they sort of determine your stream of academics. Because if you're looking to go to post-secondary, you have to take academic stream versus the applied stream. Now, I know there's conversations happening within the school board to say, get rid of stream because it disproportionately affects, especially Black families, for example, or racialized families. But for now, it's here. So understanding that from an elementary school and from grade 7, right, your grades have to be strong. If not, then that's where, and we talk about also, so, some of the systemic issues where if I might be struggling a little bit or a young person is struggling in elementary school, that's when, racialized kids often might be pushed in the applied stream versus the academic stream, right? Because they're looking at your grade 7 grades to determine. And sometimes that's not the best indicator, because I know, some kids, didn't do well in elementary and flourished, right, in secondary, and then the opposite has happened as well. So yeah, I mean, really working on strong academics. Of course, the higher your grades from a basketball or trying to get a scholarship later on perspective is the more schools can recruit you. So you want that, the 3.5 and up in terms of a GPA, because the US, they work in GPA format. So 70s in the US. On the Canadian side, if you're leaving Canada to go to the US, a 70 is a B, but in the States, often that's a C. So those are things often that, some kids realize that they've got to put in more work if they're actually going to, the US. And some people might say also US schools, secondary schools, might be less challenging. I highly doubt that's the case in the private school realm, because they're getting you ready. And that's the true meaning of proprietary school, prep school, is getting you ready for post-secondary education. And the living away from home, for example, is also getting you ready. And I also like to just challenge student athletes and families to say, if you can't maintain your academics, how are you going to be able to play sports and maintain your academics? Because in colleges and universities, you are required to maintain a GPA in order to stay on the team and to keep your scholarship. Because scholarships are offered 1 year, and I'm talking scholarship now to post-secondary, NCAA, NAIA, for example. You have to maintain that grade level to retain your scholarship. If not, you lose your scholarship, right? And so it's so important to focus in, and of course, get into good study habits when the student athletes are young. I'm not sure if you're sharing this later, but on my website, I have a transition guide from elementary school to high school, focusing on, you know, the academics as well, and things that families need to be thinking about. When your kids are in elementary school, they need to be well-rounded. They shouldn't just be focused in on one sport. They need to be you know, to bring in those different muscle groups by playing all sorts of different sports. And that's really going to help them when they're ready to specialize. So not specializing too early in a sports, which we see a lot of that happening today. Anyways, yeah, that's a good resource of a guide because it also talks about the academic piece as well.
That's
I
awesome.
like, I like what Coach Mom is saying. I always encourage parents to be present at school. Your child's teacher should know who you are. You should be following what's happening education-wise. Expand their horizon to new things. You know, once they're curious, you know, you try to sort of encourage that type of curiosity, so they're well-rounded and they have a brighter outlook on what's happening around the world, what's happening in their communities. So we encourage that because times when you meet the kid, the last thing you want is a sort of a monosyllabic answer from the kid. Kids can go online and determine, you know, they can find information on sports or games or whatever. So by the time you get to that age, they should be looking at the schools. This is a good fit for me. What does that school offer me that I want? Or, you know, is that what I want to do? You know, maybe I can thrive here. So therefore we try to, you know, expand their horizon, give them, you know, challenge them to do more, challenge them beyond the academics, even challenge them with the academics as well. Tony talked about his mom being you know, behind him and he couldn't go anywhere unless he finished his homework. We have to be there for our children. We have to be present. We have to be pushing them. We have to give them that little nudge when they need it. I think we just can't leave it up to them and figure, okay, so the kid's not doing well, and what do I do? And you have to start planning now by investing that time in your child and letting them know what's out there. Letting them know what the options are and prepare them for the future.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for that additional insight. You know, so this is good messaging for everyone, right? So, you know, we really do, you know, what I'm hearing is we really need to be involved. We really need to be involved to ensure that they are performing at their best ability, so that they can take advantage of these opportunities now and beyond. So Tony, can you tell us, you know, and I'm sure that, you know, other parents may be wondering, especially, you know, we have, I'm sure, a lot of parents who, you know, we're within racialized communities. What is the experience for you at Upper Canada? I'm sure, you know, I mean, I'm not sure what the numbers are for, you know, Black students on campus, but, you know, what is that experience like for you?
Um, it's a tough question. It took some adjusting to, I guess, but I started in grade six, so I wouldn't have been as aware of it and as mature
Mm-hmm.
as I am now. So I guess that starting earlier and I guess growing up with those guys, because we were in the same grade, obviously, that I guess lessened the shock of coming in. Um, but as I like leave the bubble, like we have there's a term like bubble of the private schools and of this neighborhood and all that, and you come back in, you kind of then you pick up on stuff. When we go to church and I come back to school, I notice I'm talking differently. I'm code switching. My mom and I had like a lot of long talks about that. And I guess I'll come back to my experience, but I want to talk, I guess, to parents about making sure that your kid knows they can come to you for problem, making sure that, as Miss Lewis and Coach Mom said, make sure that you're present. I remember that when I was in elementary school, that I'd come home, I'd do my homework, and then when I would go for walks, I'd go on a bike ride, she'd walk, I'd go on my scooter, and she'd let me just talk about life, about how was my day, how was your day, what we'd play games. I remember we used to play games in the subway. Like she'd get a long word in the newspaper, and like how many little words can you make from that? Just little things like that. That I guess I didn't realize it that, but that like we were that was our bonding. That was our way of bonding together. And as I go to school and as I have these struggles with my identity, figuring out where my place is and all that, knowing that she always had my back and she was my rock. She really is, even to this day, especially to this day. What am I saying? That I guess just being, as both of you said, just being present in your kids' lives, make sure that they can come to you, that will help when the challenges do come. But in terms of racial and like my experience after the George Floyd, after his death back in June, our school hosted, we brought in a professional in managing diversity at private schools. And we had a discussion first with only the Black community and then with the greater community. And the school and the principal, he's been very responsive, and he's been leading the charge in what's the word he uses? Pluralism. Yeah. Making sure that everyone in our community, for the racially oppressed or gender oppression or anything, that they have a voice and they are heard at the school. So I'm head of the Black Student Union at the school. We call it Black Excellence Society. So this year we're hosting discussions about identity and race and fitting in. I'm working with another student here, but that's our direction for the club this year. That's a legacy that we want to leave behind, is that's a place for boys to express their feelings on on racial identity and their experiences. And I'm also part of a team that's creating statements for the school, for students, and for teachers as well, about what we as students, like, what do we want? What do we believe will better our school? Things like making sure that you say the right name. Like, I don't want to be confused with another kid in my class. Making sure that, because even sometimes it's a lack of awareness, and sometimes people don't realize they're doing it, that if you speak up in class, are you silent, or are you silenced by the teacher? Are they encouraging your voice? Making sure that teachers, maybe because a lot of times they're not aware of it, that they step outside of themselves, I guess, and honestly reflect and look, is your classroom inclusive to everyone? Is the content, is the books that we're reading in class, are they inclusive to everyone? Will there be problems when boys in grade 10, 11, 12 really start to mature and have different ideas and thoughts? Is the teacher really facilitating that discussion? And the two biggest things this year were making sure that people step out of their comfort zone, that it's okay to just come into a space and listen. It's okay to just come into a space and say, I don't know, tell me more about your experience. I want to learn. That's what we want people to really, to develop in themselves this year, is that willingness to learn. And I guess I'm able to lead that charge because I know who I am and I know where I come from in my background. And before I wasn't as proud to be Black, but now I'm really proud of my racial identity and what that means to me. But it was a journey. It was a journey in church. It was a journey on myself. It was a journey with my mom, with other boys here, talking to other kids during the summer at different schools, just learning about different experiences. Connecting with faculty here that are Black, that have, making sure that they know, I know that they're there for me as well, that they're there as a teacher and they're there because of this. So
right.
I think, like I said, you get as much as you put in. So my ability to connect with people and network is that the school, I guess, trusts me and trusts the leaders in the school to lead that step in fighting racial oppression.
Wow.
I love that. Did you just hear this young man?
Thank you.
Drop it. Snap. Come on. Yeah, right? Tony, awesome. Thank you so much for that. That was awesome. That was really great. There were a couple of, I wanted to shout out a couple of people. Kim Lopez, thank you for joining us. And I'm glad that you're finding this really informative. And I know Mom Shola, she's been also engaging in there. She's appreciating all of the wisdom, and actually even had to comment about, some of the information, specifically Cheryl, that you had shared. So I think that we've got some good engagement. We're coming towards the end of this. So what I really want to leave is, if there are some tips, key lessons learned, anything that you want to leave with parents before we transition into showing some of the resources that we want to leave them with. So let's start with you first, Cheryl. Any key tips, lessons?
Yes. If you're thinking about private schools, I would suggest that you go on the website and look at the different schools. I always encourage people to do open houses. Now it's virtual. It's all virtual, so you can sit in your pajamas and find out everything that's going on in the schools right now.
Just put on a different top. Nobody needs to know what's underneath, right?
Exactly. I would stand up right now. But go on the websites and see what they're offering. Is it a good fit for me?
Yeah.
Can I thrive there? Would it take me where I want to go? It's important to start thinking about goals now. I know some of these kids, when you ask them, what do you want to do? they still have to scratch their heads. Mind you, you would probably change your mind 1,000 times. You go to university in first year, you're changing, like, I took my daughter to McGill and I thought, okay, I'm going to retire off of her. And because she's going to be this international lawyer and here's my meal ticket. And so they said, oh, they're going to change, what they want to study in the first year. Go, not my daughter. First, what do they do? So therefore, but start thinking at least, just look at, what we offer coding classes, as you mentioned earlier. And we've been getting key speakers in the industry to come and talk to the kids. And they're asking, so how much do you make? And what do you have to study? So therefore, start giving that some serious thought. And so therefore, if you can find a match and find a school that will satisfy what you're looking for, I suggest that you do that. Mom, let the kids go online. Let them start looking, offer them your laptop, offer them, some sort of an iPad or whatever that device is, so they can start doing their own research. Have that conversation at dinner time, engage them in conversations about thinking about the future, engage in meaningful conversations, as Tony said, his mom, he bonded with his mom while traveling. I had one parent who traveled from Durham to UCC, and he said, I spent that time bonding with my son in the morning and in the evening. And that kid, when he left, he's okay. I'm not going to call his name, but right now he's at Chapel Hill University. So
wow,
yes. So therefore, so start that. Just sort of like poking them ever so often. It's never too early to start engaging them in conversations about what they can be, just the words of encouragement. You can be the best with whatever you want to be. And how can I help you achieve that goal? So parents, start talking to your kids right now.
I love that. I love that. Before I go to Sharon, I want to ask you a quick question, Cheryl. Like, what would you say is the latest that a student can apply to a private school? So, because they can apply in high school, right? What would you say is the latest they could do that?
The application deadline is usually around the 1st of December, late November, early December. I'm going to be taking applications in another couple weeks. So therefore, what we do when we work with the students, not only do we qualify them, because we want to ensure that they will thrive there, because you send me some C's. If I send those applications to the school, they will call me and go like, what are you thinking? So therefore, start working on your marks right now. We will train them as to how to go through the interview process. Some schools use standardized testing, but then again, some of them use critical thinking questions. So we even take them through an exercise, ask them open-ended questions. And, first of all, I explain what a monosyllabic answer is. And once they know, I said, forget about it, because I don't want a monosyllabic answer. I want to hear about you. You have 45 minutes in which to impress me. And when you go to school, you have a little time to impress, the admissions officer. So therefore, we ask them, so we train them to do that, how to prepare for it, so therefore this whole process as to how he does. And this year, we have someone who stepped up to the plate and said, I will train your children to do the SSAT, which is a standardized aptitude test. So therefore, we want to help them succeed in every which way. We're giving them every opportunity to pass. We're giving them every opportunity to get to the head of the line.
Awesome. Awesome. So that's great work that you guys are doing. So can kids apply to the school? Is it the latest, probably grade 11, that they can apply to private schools?
As a matter of fact, I have one school, they would take kids, they were looking for grade 12 students. So
okay.
as late as, so therefore, we have schools going from grade 2 all the way to grades 11. Again, so therefore different schools would have different offers as far as financial aid. So as Sharon mentioned earlier, any school can take you if you're going to pay your way. You're probably going to struggle through academically, but if they're offering you any financial aid or any scholarship, there isn't a standard they would expect from you as far as your academic performance.
Okay. No, thank you for that, for clarifying that. So Coach Mom, Sharon, any last words, tips, lessons learned that you want to share with them?
Yeah, a couple things. One, we talk about grades, we talk about athleticism, and the third piece for me that I always coach people on is character. young people in terms of character, and character also includes social media. Parents need to make sure that they're monitoring social media, because from a prep school lens, in terms of, the thing with prep school is, and private schools, they know why they're accepting you, because they know you're coming to play sports. And especially in the States, they don't make any bones about it. Of course, they want you to have the full package, but they know you're coming to a sport. So, of course, people will check your social media. Just to make sure, again, you're the right type of student athletes, that they're looking for. With respect to your prep school, the reality is, especially within Canada, there's no listing of prep schools necessarily out there. So, as Cheryl spoke about, there's a website that you can go and do your research, for example. There isn't such thing necessarily in Canada. And of course, that's the niche market that I work with in terms of creating this business. I work with close to at least 100 schools in North America, in terms of, private school, obviously schools here in Canada as well, and different form of private prep schools to be able to link families to, so finding the best fit. But yeah, there is no central depository of information per se for prep school. Coach Mom is that central location. And the last piece that I would say,
plug Coach Mom.
Yeah, well,
you're awesome.
Is research.
Yeah.
Really important. Do your homework. And I know sometimes these things are really hard to navigate, but there are subject matter experts out there, right? Cheryl's here with you.
Yes.
Tony and his experience, Coach Mom from a prep school perspective. So just find those resources, but do your homework. It's really, really important to do your research, because not all schools are created equal. At all. And again, according to what is it that you're looking for, are you the right fit for that environment?
Right. Thank you for that. Thank you. And Tony, any words that you would want to share with parents who are thinking about their kids pursuing this track?
For sure, yeah. I have a whole list of stuff in my notes.
I saw you writing down.
Yeah.
I'm like, boy,
Yeah.
I'm prepared. I love it. Yeah.
But,
by the way, a lot of people are feeling you. Okay, I had Natasha Rickett with a clapping emoji, just like Cheryl. She had hers on her Zoom page. We had Nadine Fraser also. She's like, beautifully said. So everyone is feeling you, Tony. You're doing well. I know you're hanging with bated breath. Your last words. Okay, so let's hear it.
So I'd start with, especially the families in general, just think outside the box in terms of what your kid can do. My mom, she put me in swimming, skating, chess, karate. I did karate for a number of years. And I started in grade 6. So when I had my interview with Miss Lewis and with the school, they weren't expecting me to talk about mental health or what do I want to be. They just wanted to know me as a kid. They wanted to know how I thought, how I acted. I remember the teacher, he asked me, just tell me what you like to do. What do you like to do on a Saturday? And I remember I told him, I go to karate every Saturday. I have my sensei and I learn from him. And I said, okay, so what do you guys do there? He just wanted to see, like Ms. Lewis said, how do we think? Do we take notes? Is it monosyllabic, or can I actually go into depth about different things and engage in a conversation? And especially with the younger grades, because they know you won't be able to write the SAT, or you might not do the best on a test in all the subjects. They want to see if you have areas to improve and if you have the ability to improve. And that comes with how you think, first off. So I guess just, especially the parents, especially just engage in conversation with your kids, like Ms. Lewis said about interviews, is that 30, 40 minutes. It's not a natural time to talk. So you have to train that, and you can start that as early as possible. You can start that tonight if you want to. Ask your kid, how was your day? What are you doing in school? What kind of stuff do you want to get involved in? That will start a conversation, and that will teach them and build their confidence to be able to have long conversations and engage in different ways of thinking.
You've just planted. We're going to have a whole bunch of little kids who'll be like, why is mom asking me all these questions? Why is daddy asking me all of this? They didn't know they just came off of this call and they're getting ready to private school. That's what's going on. I love it. Yes. You had other points you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, for sure. Social media, like Coach Mom said, is that I remember in grade 7 at the middle school before we came to the upper school.
Yes.
That's our name for the high school here, is that they made an assembly. And I don't remember what it was for, but I remember they told us, they had a presentation, that you guys are going to go into the upper school now. You're going to see bigger kids in grade 11 and 12, and they are more mature than you guys. Keep track of your social media. Don't post stuff that you shouldn't be posting. And a lot of us actually deleted social media because one, it takes up a lot of time. And when you have projects to do and read books to read, you don't have time for that. So my piece of advice for you guys, I deleted it in the summer, 2 summers ago actually, is just delete it. And you'll have a lot more time than you think you do to get work done.
Okay. Snapchat, TikTok, all of that. My kids are not going to be happy tonight. Delete. I'm not talking about this anymore. I love it. Thank you for that.
So that's what I talk about social media. There's positive ways for networking and stuff, but for the general aspect is that my recommendation would be to delete it. When you're applying to the schools and when you actually, because of COVID, obviously they won't be doing in-person interviews, but when they do, it's the little things that they pick up on, that the admission officers pick up on. I remember I came in grade 6, there was a kid who took 7 cookies and like 2 juices. And my mom had told me, like, when you go there, I'll get you McDonald's after, I'll get you food after. Don't make a fool of yourself there. And because I heard that, I paid attention. The teachers were looking at it and they would take notes on everything. Is this kid greedy? Is he sharing? Is he talking with the other kids? All that stuff. We had a game where you have to throw a ball around. Are you engaging? Are you engaged with the other kids? That's my experiences coming into from the middle grades.
Right.
In the upper school, I'm sure there'll be a dialogue and a more of a in-depth conversation, but a handshake by a student, learn to give a firm handshake, because here a handshake is a great first impression.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. This is such wonderful information shared. A lot of happy parents now equipped to get their kids on that private school or prep school track. And a lot of, I'm sorry, my daughter, she's here helping me and she's thinking, TikTok, yes, it's going. It's going. No more of this dancing thing, it's going. All right, so this has been awesome. What I wanted to do was to share my slides with everyone. I wanted to share some of the resources a few resources we've put together. First of all, I want to plug ACCN. They are going to be hosting a session, an information session. Cheryl, you said it was October 12th?
Yes, the 18th, sorry, the 18th.
Sorry, the 18th, okay. So they will be hosting an information session for parents that are interested to learn more about accessing private school opportunities and how ACCN can help them. So, and I think it's at 2 p.m. If you're interested in that information, you can email Cheryl. I will have her page here. And as I said, for those of you who registered, I'm going to drop this document in your inbox, so you will have these resources to access as well. So here are just a few resources. First of all, ACCN, they've compiled quite a bit of information on their website. So that one was listed. Also, Cheryl had shared the website for the SSAT. So that is the aptitude testing in preparation for independent schools. And then she also shared information about the financial services, okay, in terms of gaining financial aid. All right, so that information's in here. We also have Cheryl's information for ACCN. You can email info@accntoronto.com to find information about their upcoming session, in helping to get kids access to private school opportunities. I also have Sharon Butler's information. She is niche. She has this space covered. You want prep school, you've got a student athlete that you're thinking of pursuing this path, engage Sharon Butler. I will, okay? Her information's here. You can find her on the web. You can find her various social media handles. And of course, you can reach out to her by email. So this information is here for you. And then there's me. And I'm here to support you for families that are, looking for opportunities to start planning ahead for their kids' futures. We're talking about these types of opportunities. We've talked about scholarship opportunities, but it's awesome. It's really important for us to also start putting a little bit something aside for our kids' future. And the RESP is a great way to do that. And I can help families with that, in addition to other protection and legacy strategies. I'd be honored to help. So my information is here as well. So we just went a little bit over time, but I think a lot of information was shared. People enjoyed it from the engagement, and know that for those of you who are catching the replay, please do continue to engage. You know, I will still respond to comments. So I would love to hear what you think, and whatever I can do to help you with that, with your journey, I would love to do. So I want to thank all of you for joining us. Thank the amazing panelists, Ms. Cheryl Lewis, Coach Mom, Sharon Butler, and Mr. Tony Agbaje Ojo. Thank you for lending your time and your wisdom to equip us to position our kids for success.
Thank you for the platform.
Awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you,
Thank
Billie
you,
Jane.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Really
you.
nice meeting the panelists
Bye.
as well.
Awesome. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.